My name is Dr. Vincent Basile, and I'm a social scientist. For the past 10 years, I've been studying the experiences of boys of color in our schools. Today I'm going to talk to you about how our boys of color are criminalized in our elementary schools and what some teachers are doing about it. You see, we have a very real problem. Our elementary schools treat our boys of color like they're criminals. There's a master narrative that follows this. It says that they are violent, they're truant, they don't go to class, that they devalue education, and that they're disrespectful. Thing is, this narrative is empirically false. In fact, in some elementary schools, boys of color go to class more than their white peers. They're oftentimes more innovative in small group work, and sometimes they know more about what's going on in the classroom than even the teacher does. And yet, in elementary schools, boys of color they're punished more severely and more frequently than their white peers for the same disciplinary infractions, sometimes for doing nothing at all. Let me give you an example. This is Rolando. Rolando was in an after-school program in his school, a STEM program. They had a project coming up. They were working on simple machines. Rolando was incredibly excited. He had an idea for launching a paper airplane using a lever. Rolando had gone to the bathroom after school. He came out and was on his way to his class. Rolando put his arms out as he came out of the bathroom, presumably being that paper airplane he was so excited to build. And he flew from one side of the hallway to the other side of the hallway, touching the walls as he made it, zigzagging his way down. A regular school day teacher came around the corner and saw him and yelled at him, "Rolando, what are you doing?" She sprinted down the hallway. She grabbed Rolando. She said, "Rolando, I'm sick of this. You know the rules. You know how to walk in the hallway. Come with me. We're going to the office. I'm done with you." Rolando protested. He said, "I can't. I'm going to my class right now. We're building simple machines. My group needs me." She said, "Not today." And she took him to the office. In fact, Rolando didn't make it to class that day. Rolando didn't make it to class for the next couple of days because Rolando was suspended. Rolando wasn't suspended for flying around the hallway. Rolando was suspended for being disrespectful. The thing is, I had seen a lot of white students walking down that hallway during the school day, after school, for weeks, on all different sides of that hallway, and I've never seen any of them being punished for it. Let me give you another example. From disciplinary action notes, same year, the same school. On the top left, a white girl had pushed another student to the ground. This other girl had been calling her names, and she couldn't take it anymore, shoved her to the ground. She had a conversation with administration about it. Administrators told her, "It's understandable, all right, but you still need to apologize to the class, and we're going to let your parent know about it." That same year, same class, a Latino boy pushed another boy to the ground. Virtually the same thing for the same reasons. The Latino boy explained that this other boy had been calling he and his friends names. The administration invalidated that and identified that as no apparent reason, identified it as violence without cause, which of course is a suspendable offense. I've seen hundreds of these comparisons. In the second narrative on the left, a white boy, he spent the entire day not listening to his teachers, not following directions, doing whatever he wanted. He ended the day by calling the custodian a name, a bad one. Administration had a talk with him, talked him through it, and eventually he admitted, "Oh yeah, maybe my behavior was disrespectful." The administration punished him formally by telling him, "Don't do that again." Now let me introduce you to Bryant. Bryant is an incredibly creative student. He's a chair tipper. We all went to school with chair tippers, right? Bryant couldn't stop. The teacher didn't like it. The teacher would tell Bryant, stop tipping your chair. Bryant would stop. You know how this goes, right? 2 minutes later, Bryant's tipping the chair again, right? Bryant's mind was going a mile a minute. Very creative, very intelligent, lots of ideas. Bryant could not keep 4 legs on the ground. Well, over time, right, the teacher's only willing to tell Bryant so many times before deciding that Bryant's inability to keep 4 legs on the ground was disrespectful. Right? Bryant was suspended for this offense, right? And the teacher labeled him a thug for doing this. So be clear, in elementary schools, this is what disrespectful criminal thug behavior looks like. Y'all, this is a problem. Luckily, some teachers are doing some things about it. Over the last several years, I've seen multiple teachers that have purposefully engaged their classrooms with practices oriented around decriminalizing our boys of color. I categorized all of these practices into 6 groups: assuming brilliance, positive reframing, highly respectful interactions, honoring space, repair, and structures and policies. Assuming brilliance is a very purposeful practice that teachers bring where they make the decision that when they are assessing, interacting, or otherwise observing boys of color, that they assume that whatever's happening there, however that student is interacting, whatever it sounds like, whatever it looks like, however they're engaging their learning, that it's brilliant, and that it's on the teacher to see that and find that. Positive reframing, again, another very purposeful action that teachers take where they step into the space and make the decision that what is happening there, well, it would normally be placed or viewed as something negative. Those teachers very purposely, positively reframe it. Highly respectful interactions, another very purposeful thing where teachers choose their language and their tone when interacting with boys of color to be very clear with them that they are welcomed in this space, both as students and as human beings. Honoring space. Teachers sometimes very particularly recognize that a boy of color through an ordinary school day is going to experience a lot of forms of criminalization, and that means that they may need some time and space to step back, to regroup, and maybe even engage in some healthy resistance. Repair. Teachers sometimes make missteps when they're going about this. When they recognize it and step back into the space and fix whatever it is that they've done wrong, repair the relationship with that student, profound effects. And finally, structures and policies. Before any other thing happens, teachers sometimes make very clear decisions about the ways that they structure their classrooms and the ways that they conduct their classes that make sure that all students, especially boys of color, are welcoming in what they're doing. These practices are dynamic, they interact with each other, and when teachers do them, it has immediate and profound results. Let me give you an example. This is Marvin. The classroom assignment was one I think we're probably all familiar with. Demonstrate your understanding of the rock cycle. You remember the rock cycle? It's an igneous rock, a sedimentary rock, metamorphic rock, right? And back around again. We drew this in elementary school, maybe, right? Some people remember? Yeah. So, I know, I'm taking you back. So, the assignment was to show you understand it, right? And the way that we did that in elementary school back then and still today is we just draw the diagram. We just draw these 3 kinds of rocks and you create the arrows and say one becomes another, right? So the teacher had taken one more step forward and she had gotten examples of each kinds of rock and placed them on the tables, right? Her notion was that students would take construction paper, draw the little 3 things, draw the arrows, and then maybe sort those rocks on the construction paper to show that they could make the connection between what's on the paper and what's on the rocks. And so maybe they might start to get this flow and be able to separate these rocks out. After laying all the materials out, she said, okay, here's your task. Show me that you understand the rock cycle. Go. Marvin grabbed 2 pieces of pumice in front of him. Pumice are very soft, igneous rocks, volcanic rocks, right? He picked them up and held them up pretty high above his head and just started smashing them together as hard as he could with a whole lot of fervor. and pieces of rock were breaking off the pumice and just falling down onto his construction paper. And he was going and going. And the teacher from the other side of the room saw this, became incredibly tense, and she ran across the room, right? In a situation like this, what would usually happen is that Marvin would get lit up. He would get kicked out of class. He would get sent to the office for destroying school property. Almost certainly would be suspended. Right? Instead, this teacher stopped right before she got there as she recollected herself, pulled herself together, and she stepped into the space. She clearly made a very purposeful decision. She leaned in and said, "Marvin, what you got going on?" Marvin didn't stop. He was still smashing these things together. And he looked up at her and he said, "Oh, I'm doing erosion." Right? She was taken aback. She was shocked. But she didn't let Marvin see that. And she processed. And then, off the top of her head, assuming that this was a brilliant moment, said, "Cool. Marvin, can you show me something else? Can you show me metamorphic rock?" Marvin just put the pumice down, and he scooped up all of those bits of sediment that he had made, and he put them in his hands, and he tensed his body up, and he pushed really hard together with his hands, and he shook a little bit, like sort of pantomiming this pressure, and he looked up at her and said, "Well, I think you're going to have to come back in like 1,000,000 years." Marvin was brilliant, right? Marvin showed that he understood this rock cycle probably better than anybody in the class, right? This was a profound moment. Marvin was brilliant. All our boys of color are brilliant. And these teachers are showing us that all we have to do is make the classroom a better and more welcoming space for them and get out of the way. Right? See, for a long time in education, we've been asking this question of how do we fix our boys of color? And these teachers have shown us that maybe what we need to be asking is, how do we fix the system and let them be who they are? Thank you.